I mean, we didn't do much other than play the video, so we can just continue. Okay, so just to kind of start out, we're gonna give a little bit of a like setting the stage kind of thing, right? Kind of showing people why EWB-USA is needed, and then we'll go into just how EWB-USA functions, and then we'll bring it home with one of our local projects. So kind of here's some metrics about like the lack of water, the lack of access to electricity, inadequate sanitation, and like how many people rely on biomass energy for cooking, right? So just kind of take a look at this, and the numbers are very, very big, which is why organizations like EWB-USA are needed, right? So EWB is not the only one, but there's definitely some unique things about EWB-USA, right? So it's kind of two-sided, right? So build stronger communities globally, right? To make sure that they have the right infrastructure and all that stuff. And then build stronger global leaders, right? So for us that are leading our chapters or just involved with EWB-USA, you know, it helps. I know for me personally, it's helped me develop a lot on skills that I may not be getting as, you know, when I was doing transportation or whatever it was at my actual job. Like, and the challenges that come up with these projects are definitely very different than the challenges that come up on our day-to-day jobs, even though the technical skills needed maybe not be as high. And then I know everyone's heard about the Sustainable Development Goals, right? So EWB obviously helps contribute to a lot of these with the clean water, energy, and stuff like that, right? But the way we do things also can kind of help. So one of the major things that I like about EWB is that we only use in-country materials, right? So you're kind of learning about the process of our projects, but that's a huge thing to me that makes it more resilient overall than if you were to just bring a bunch of materials in from the US or whatever, right? Because what happens whenever we leave, or what happens whenever the pump or something breaks, right? So, yeah, so then like, obviously that's why EWB is needed. EWB-USA was founded in 2002, with the first project being in Belize. And then these results are like a year or two old, right? So they've hopefully have increased since then, right? The millions of people impacted. So if you can see, that's a lot of people. But when you look at each community, even if it's like a couple hundred people, it really gets to show you how many people are really part of this organization. And these are the types of projects. So structure, sanitation, IT, energy, civil works, agriculture, and water. So kind of just look at the two biggest buckets here, water and infrastructure, and then obviously sanitation. So definitely water is a huge, huge place where we're bringing to these communities globally. And so you can kind of start to see where the communities that EWB-USA helps are. And obviously because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to travel to these communities, but normally, and you'll kind of see where we are on our project, and it's good and bad to see. So again, here are the communities where EWB helps. And this is just kind of a makeup of our chapters, right? So it's split up into the student chapters from universities and the professional chapters. So obviously we are a professional chapter, so you can see we're definitely one of the smaller groups, but it's mainly made up of student chapters. And there's about 15,000 members and a little over 300 chapters all around the nation. So, and then there's also other leadership and different committees that that make up EWB, because obviously we need resources on like reviewing plans or health and safety and just like different technical experts that we need, right? So those are definitely really cool. And then we're going to go into like how an actual project is executed through EWB-USA, and I'm going to hand it off to Julie for that one.
So when a project starts, typically the community members go to either an NGO, which is a non-governmental organization, or the government there that works with a non-governmental organization. Those organizations can either apply to EWB or be like, hey, I know somebody that can help you. A lot of times it's a community down the road got assistance through EWB, so they tell their neighbors. Those people are like, hey, can they help us too? So that kind of is word of mouth, as well as in Bolivia, we're working specifically with the government. And so the government comprised a list of, in Bolivia, which is one of the poorest countries in America, they comprise a list of they call them states. It's kind of the equivalent of our counties that have the most needs. And those counties comprise a list of the cities or towns, villages, however you word that have the most need. And so EWB got up those lists, and we're working with the local government there to get engineering design and assistance in all of these communities. So working systematically with the government, we can figure out who actually has the most need instead of, them coming to us and yeah, they have a need, but not as much of a need as another community. So working to really impact the greatest people. So we partner with those people. So we, as an organization and as a local chapter, partnered with one particular community. So kind of have a memorandum of understanding, figuring things out. With that, these are community driven. So if I come to your community, you tell me you have a water problem, and I say, no, really your problem is you need this. Well, that's obviously not listening to you. It's not going to work because you don't think that's your problem. And so listening to the community and going and interviewing them and talking to them to figure out what their needs actually are, what they perceive their needs are, and then working together on a solution. Because I can give them a solution from an American sense. If they don't have buy-off, they're not going to use it. They're not going to need it. And so working with them on a community-driven thing. We go down there first and do an assessment, and that's kind of what I talked about, as well as getting base data. So doing a on-the-ground survey, do water quality analysis, figure out where the homes are located, who lives in them, what their water demand needs are. We come back to the states and do the design. Obviously, we can't stay down there forever, so it's easier to do that here. We come back to the states to do the design. We also come back to the states to do a lot of fundraising, because with building anything, it takes money, so you have to have funding to do that. So we come back here to do the design and fundraising. Then we typically, in a normal cycle, would go there and do the implementation. Then we would come back to design on the next phase, go implementation. Eventually get down to, okay, we have all their needs addressed. Go back, monitor, evaluate, did this work, did it not work, are there pieces that are broken? Can they take care of those broken pieces? So figuring out all those pieces. Right now, that's not going to last in the implementation. We're actually doing remote implementation. So we have a chat going with a group of engineers in Bolivia that work for a non-governmental organization that we're partnering with. They're hiring contractors to do the implementation, and they send us text updates all the time with photos. So we'll show some of those photos later on. Typically, you form a partnership, you facilitate them. Obviously, you can't always do American standards to design. So we look at what are the Bolivian national standards, what are the local standards, what are international standards, because there's not going to be standards locally for everything. So looking to see what standard we can put in place. For water quality, we've designed the water quality to meet Bolivian national standards, because that's what's locally there. With that, we make construction with locally available parts. If I bring parts in from America, that part breaks, they're up a creek. So using local parts that they can get to do something low tech is very common. Outside the box, kind of common, but typically you find a solution that works, that they can do the maintenance, they understand, and then engage all kinds of stakeholders in the community. So these are things that we've done in the past. Here is a project that we did in Guatemala, about 250 people. We did a, that's okay. We did a spring box, which detains the water at the top, distribution system down below. Here's some of the planometrics. We also did hygiene education for the community, and then did water sampling there. With that, you also assess the impact. Looking at, are more kids in school after they have clean water versus before they have clean water? I mean, I'm not a doctor, I can't assess their health, but if more kids are in school that were absent before, that's a good impact. Are people using the system? If they don't use it, pointless. If they, like in this Guatemala community, the government installed a chlorinator. Well, the government would come in and put chlorine tablets in there. They didn't like the taste of it, so they would tear it up every time. So going back and are they using the system, have they broken it so that it doesn't work? Looking at things like that. Not really how to assess impact here, but sometimes that's the best we can do. But planning, figuring out what the solution is, monitor it, have you adequately addressed it, and then evaluating to make sure that the outcomes were met.
We can probably skip this.
So here you can do networking. There's lots of different ways to network. There's opportunities. You know, if you want to get involved, there's lots of opportunities to do so, and then become part of the movement.
So then I can kind of go into locally what kind of our chapter is comprised of, and then we'll go through our current project. But our chapter is relatively small. Well, I guess it depends on where you're looking at. Like Central Houston has a huge chapter, but we are comprised of probably our leadership team is about 10 people, and then we have members, right, that we can leverage. But we have the design committee, the fundraising committee, which is our probably busiest things, right? And then we have like somebody who handles our social media, somebody who sends out the emails and sends out meeting minutes and afterwards, just like, you know, any other organization like ASE or whatever. But our biggest thing that we really have to focus on is fundraising, right? So just to kind of give you some context, our current phase that we are starting with, which is just to rehab the well, and we'll go into some of the details and put the tanks in and stuff like that, cost us roughly $16,000, $17,000, right? And we're estimated that each phase for our project, there's about 5, could easily cost us up to $20,000, right? So this is over $100,000 project, and this is just for the materials, right? So all of the money that goes to our chapter goes to buying materials or paying like since we're doing remote implementation, we do have to pay the contractor now to do these things. So again, like a lot of our design isn't the highest in like technical level, right? Because it is a pretty simple system, but just make sure that we have the money for that is definitely really good. So our project that we have right now is in Culiculi Alto, Bolivia. And then we'll go into the detail more a little bit. But here's just some pictures of when we've done like some leadership workshops for our chapter. This is really fun for me. I know this year we had to do it virtually, so this is when we did it in person. But basically, like, you know, make sure that our chapter is positioned well to help our community, right? Because that's what we are doing at the end of the day. We're helping these communities. And what I'd personally love to see is that our chapter grows enough to where we have multiple ongoing projects, right? Because if you have a good enough funding stream, you have lots of volunteers, then you can have multiple projects going on. I think Houston has 5, right? So that's what our goal for our chapter, just to make sure we increase the impact, because there's tons of people who, you know, are passionate about giving and want to help, but it's up to us to make sure that they have an avenue to do that. So Julie, you want to go over our project?
So the current community is Culiculi Alto, which is in the Altiplano, which is the high plateau of Bolivia. La Paz is in the far right over there, and that's the cultural capital of Bolivia. There's 2 capitals of Bolivia, so a little bit different. But we're about 3 hours away from La Paz. We're in the province of Sica Sica, which is shown here on Highway 1, which is the best highway in Bolivia. Actually, it's a pretty good highway. Wouldn't be a highway by our standard, it's probably a county road, but it's highway number 1. So here's Sica Sica, which is the main province. Come down the highway to La Chaca, and then come down to our community. The yellow dots on there are where the homes are located, and the red lines are where the roads are. So that's
roads.
Roads. Rough map. There are no maps, and so therefore that was part of the assessment, is we had to create a map.
Right.
So these are some of the people of Bolivia. So the community is a very agrarian community. So most people are on a large acreage that is surrounded by farms. Most people have sheep, goats, chickens, cows, alpacas, you know, just a little bit of everything. And live in homes, generally, they're mud-made dwellings with either tin or straw roofs. And, go back one.
Oops,
The
sorry.
bottom right corner over here is the elementary school. They have a kindergarten through sixth grade school, or first grade through sixth grade, I can't remember, school in the community. And if you want to go to school beyond that, you have to go to the next village over for junior high. And then if you need to go to high school, you have to go even further away. So a lot of kids drop out after sixth grade. Some go the next community over to go to the equivalent of junior high, and then the secondary school is a little bit further away. But it is on a main bus route, but you have to have payment to get there, as well as for the uniforms and everything else. All the kids have uniform tops, and then they can wear whatever on the bottom, which are really thick sweaters, and I don't know if I would like to do that.
Yeah.
But there's three main places, or a couple main places in the community. There's one church that I don't know if anybody meets in except a few times a year, because it looks very vacant. There's the ruins, which are ancient burial grounds in the Mayan community. And then there's the museum below it that the government built in front of the ruins to make it a museum of the community. But there's no real way to get there. They built, which is kind of entertaining, they built normal flush toilets because that's what they build in their museums. Well, if you have flush toilets, you kind of need water.
Right.
So currently, they're amazing commodes and sinks and everything else, but no water to get to. So kind of a problem. So therefore, there's that. There's also two milk houses in the community, which are kind of other places, and that's where the community members go each day to sell the milk from their house. So that's primary, you know. So this is the pump house. The pump was put in the 90s by a German NGO, I believe. It's in my notes, but I don't remember. I think it's German. But an NGO, they put it in. They did not size the pump appropriately, and as you can see, the pump panel, that's it on the side, completely burned. They made the pump way too big for what it was actually pumping. So the pump would kick on for about 30 seconds and then burn itself up. So it was great for testing water, not good to actually use it. So the pump's coming out, there's one pipe that goes into the road that people can use to get water. There's another one that went into the farmlands to water crops. It was only select people in the community that got to water their crops through these pumps, which to us was not really a fair solution. And so part of our design is cutting off that pipe, and the only access would be to the outside for people to use for water. So, because we're not going to give to a few families and not to others. So we collected water samples there and took it to La Paz for testing at the university, and took samples of one of the groundwater wells that one of the people in the community were currently using. So the sample that we took from the deep well tested great, actually within Bolivian water standards. The one from a shallow water was very highly contaminated, and I would not recommend drinking from it. So here's the measured level from the deep water wells, as well as the Bolivian national guidelines and the World Health Organization. Some can test, some can't test. Some of it, like for the coliforms, they know it's less than 2 because that's the best their lab can test to. So we just have to assume that that's okay. Usually if total solids aren't too high, then the coliforms aren't going to be too bad as well. So, but we can only test to the capacity of the local lab. And it's illegal to bring water back. So we did land surveying there. You can see it's a very arid climate. There's a few little places that have water, but it's very arid and dry. So most of the families, have shallow wells that they use to collect water for their everything right now. And those are littered with a lot of contaminants from animal remains. Because the cows use the bathroom in the pasture, it goes down into the flow areas, and then that goes right into the drinking water. As well as fertilizers that are used on the crops. And so there's a lot of issues with, small children with deformities because of the pesticides in the water. And those actually come out because it has to go down through so many layers to get to the deep well that generally you're going to get there. We took GPS of roads and houses. Again, we got it on the map. We took GPS coordinates of all the homes, put that into a shapefile, and now we have a shapefile with all that data. And each of the points contains metadata of the number of people, the number of animals, everything else, so that we can get our water out. Did roads of all major things, mainly the points of like the cemetery and roads, because you don't want to do a pipeline through there. So things that we need to watch out for. We have water committee meetings every night. This is kind of like the city council of the community. It's the locally elected officials in the community, and so we met with them once a night to figure out what we're doing the next day and what we need to do, as well as get their ideas on what they have to solve the problem in the community. Home surveys, we did a lot of them and came back with a stack of paper. This is kind of the data that we came back with. Different demographics, pretty even, male and female. We have the total number of homes that we surveyed and the population. We kind of extrapolated out with the homes that we didn't survey because no one was at home. And assuming it's going to be about the same data to collect. And it was interesting to see that the younger population, and then there's a gap, and then the older population, a lot of people when they're of working age, they, grow up in the community, then they leave to get a job, and then once they kind of get old enough, they retire back to the community. And a lot of people told us that if we had running water, or actually water in the community, they would try to stay more often, but it's just hard when there's limited water to have that many people. So hopefully they'll start staying more. We met with the municipality to figure out kind of a project process that went on beforehand, as well as figuring out funding. Each community gets a certain allotment of funds each year. And so part of what we're accounting for in our project is that allotment of funds from the municipality that we can use to help pay for stuff. Is it enough to pay for everything? Absolutely not. But it's enough for them to have some investment in it and get a signed agreement. So now we'll flip to the design. This is the map that the community members gave us on where they thought each line should go and where they thought the tank should go, which is actually pretty close to where we thought. So you can see this. This is in different phases. Phase 1 is what we're working on now. We're actually working on phase 1A, which is we have a pump, and then there's a local, like a current storage tank that's there. In phase 1B, we'll actually do the ground storage tank up at the top, which is the high point in the community, and then run water to the school. Because we figured if there's a midpoint, there's, a couple tap stands along the way, and the school has water, then that helps a lot of people. Because if the school can have proper sanitation and clean water, the kids at least have that part of the day. Yeah. The past slide is, we did modeling to make sure that the pressure is adequate at each spot in the system. And so that's kind of our design file. This is the tanks that are going on down near the storage tank. So it's 2 ground storage tanks. We looked at both elevated tanks and ground storage tanks. Cycle and ground storage tanks. Number 1, it was cheaper. There's not the structure that kids could climb on and possibly fall off and break an arm. Because you have a huge metal structure, what's a kid gonna think? That's a cool jungle gym. They're gonna climb up there and fall. So we settled on ground storage tanks and just putting it at the highest point in the community. It was an easier solution. And these are the tap stands. There's actually a tap stand on either side. So you can do one here and one there. It's large enough to put the canisters of water that they typically use in the community. underneath it, so it's tall enough for that. And then it has concrete underneath that collects water, a drain system to where, you know, they're gonna splash over, so that way you don't have pond issue. And so just local places along the way that we can put those. This gives a little, the next slide gives a little bit of storage. So there's the well house, and shows the elevation to go down. All of this, when we surveyed it, was on assumed coordinate system and assumed elevations. So we assumed the pump head was at 1,000 and then just went from there. When you don't have the good data, you pick a point and go with it.
Yeah.
And so all of our elevations that we have in the whole system are surveyed based on that. And so this shows where the system tank would be at Nasario's house in relation to the school, which is at pretty much one of the low spots in the community. And then next is actually fun pictures, because that shows what we're actually
Yeah,
doing.
and these we actually just got last week, so this is very new stuff. And I know, like for us, it took us a long time between implementation, because I wasn't with the chapter at the time, and now that we're actually, between assessment and implementation, so it's definitely a huge milestone. I know just from talking with EIA, which is the in-country partner there, they told us that the community is very, very happy to see this. They're actually doing a celebration for them tomorrow, which normally we would be part of it if we were there building this ourselves, but definitely is really nice just because that's why we do things, right?
And so this shows them taking the old pump out, and they removed the pipe, removed the screens, everything like that to clean it out. We have a new electrical panel because the old one was very fried to put in with the new pump. And so they took everything off of the roof, which is a little odd looking.
Yeah.
But that's the easiest. They took the panels off and they're raising and lowering everything from the roof. So getting the well done. This is them building the tanks. And so this is the elevated pad with the cement blocks. They filled it with dirt. And then those are the rotoplastic tanks that they're putting on it. We use black tanks because that way algae and everything doesn't grow inside of them. And they're a little bit more sun resistant. In Bolivia, it gets really cold. They have opposite seasons from us. And so when we were there in September a few years ago, like it was below freezing most of the day. And so by using black tanks, it keeps the heat in. And so hopefully that way it won't freeze as well.
Yeah, I was gonna see if we had the picture, but in one of the pictures there was actually snow on the ground, so it wasn't much, but there was some snow.
I put it on there.
Yeah, so
That was from this week, there was snow, which is hard to imagine. 100-degree weather there, they got snow there.
right, so pick your poison, right?
And so they're laying the line from the well system to put into the tanks. And the soil is super hard and very difficult to dig through, so I'm glad it was done in 90.
Yeah.
So,
Theoretically, you'd want to go after the rainy season
yeah.
there, but kind of you can see that for this phase, we're putting the storage tanks right next to the pump house. So if you remember the map, that wasn't at the high point, right? So here, there's been essentially no distribution system built. So that's going to be in the subsequent phases.
That'll be in 1B.
Yeah.
So 1A was kind of what we could do for remote, and then 1B will be once we can actually go.
Right.
Or we'll do plans good enough to where we don't have to be there, but that's our current.
And then one of the things that we ran into just by being on seeing these pictures and being on a call with them is that they're now putting in this road here where I guess before it was dirt, and now they're putting an actual paved road.
Yeah.
So then we had to, now one of the things that we're looking at is, okay, where were we going to cross this road where we thought it was just going to be simple? And now maybe we can put some crossings in there or see where they have culvert crossings, some different things. So it's been really cool to be part of that.
But it's good that the government's going in and actually building a road in the community, so that's a positive.
Right. So, yeah. But this is just a slide for anyone, or if you watch it later. If you ever want to donate to our chapter, like I said, anything goes to our Bolivia project. So, even if it's not just you donating, but going to, I know, like for me, like I maybe don't have a lot of money to donate, but I ask for Jacobs or whatever, like our companies that we work at. If you ever need somebody to present to them, or like something like that, and we do have a corporate package put together for corporations that do want to donate to us on kind of what things they get, whether it be their logo placement on different places or if they need a monetary value of like how much does this donation give me, whether it's like say this many feet of linear pipe, right? So there's definitely different things because ultimately that's how we function and how we're able to bring things to our communities.
And that's our website as well. If you want to go on it, you can do it or use other social media to figure out where meetings or other events are.
So normally so yeah, obviously you can join our mailing list from our website if you scroll all the way to the bottom, and that's just to get our emails, right? But our in-person meetings, well, we do in-person and via Teams, are usually the first Thursday of the month. This month, it's actually happening this Thursday, so we're a week off. But this month, we're actually doing a really cool call, just because since we did start our implementation, we're just going to do an update on that, right? So make sure that everybody in our chapter is aware of what's happening as far as construction goes, since it is a huge deal. So if you can join us, that'd be great.
People who are down there actually building it are going to be able to call.
Yep.
Which is helpful.
Yes. So yeah, but if you ever want to help out, just join us, email us, whatever. But also we have, like I said before, we have a design committee and fundraising committee. They're the biggest ones that need help. So at whatever capacity, if you ever want to, help out, then, we're certainly happy for any help. Does anybody have any questions? We just blow everybody away.